AITAH for telling my brother that has not my family. I never planned to say the words out loud. Not the way they finally came out, sharp, unfiltered, raw enough to leave a mark on both of us. The moment still replays in my mind with an almost cinematic clarity. My brother standing in the doorway of my apartment, snow melting on his jacket. That familiar defiant tilt in his posture. Me clutching the edge of the kitchen counter too tightly, trying to keep my voice even as he asked the one question I had always dreaded to answer honestly. Why are you shutting me out? It's strange how a single sentence, once spoken, feels like it echoes forever. But the truth is, it didn't begin there. It began months earlier with a phone call I ignored, and then another. It began years before that, with patterns we pretended didn't exist. It began, really, the day my brother decided that the rest of us existed only to bail him out. The first time he asked for money, I didn't think much of it. The fifth time, I started to see the shape of the problem. By the 10th time, I realized each request came with the same promises. I'll pay you back next month. This is the last time. You're the only family I've got left. He liked to use that last one the most. It made me feel guilty when I hesitated. He knew exactly how to make hesitation feel like betrayal. I grew up believing family was something unbreakable, unchosen but sacred. He grew up believing family was an automatic safety net that never ran out of rope. The night that changed everything started quietly. I was working late, sitting in my office surrounded by stacks of files and the soft hum of the only lamp still lit. That's when I received a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I listened. It was a stranger explaining that my brother had put me down as an emergency contact. Again, that had left a bar tab unpaid. Again, that someone had to settle it. Again, but it was the final line that made my stomach drop. He said you always fix things for him. Something inside me went cold. Not angry, just exhausted. Deep, marrow-level exhaustion. I didn't drive to the bar. I didn't call back. I went home, sat on the living room floor, and stared at the wall until the sun rose. He showed up 2 days later when I didn't respond to his messages. His knock was forceful, familiar, insistent. The kind of knock from someone who never expects to be turned away. I opened the door only because I knew he wouldn't leave until I did. He walked past me without asking, like he always did. Like my home was an extension of his will. You didn't answer, he said, an accusation hidden under a thin layer of fake concern. I needed you. That was the moment I realized something quietly terrifying. He didn't see me as a person anymore, just a resource. He explained the situation with the same rehearsed dramatic flair, expecting sympathy to follow like muscle memory. But something in me had changed. The words he expected, the assurances, the softness, the reluctant agreement, they didn't come. He noticed. What's with you? He demanded. You've been weird for months. And maybe I could have softened it. Maybe I could have tried to rewrite years of resentment into something gentler. But I didn't. I looked him in the eyes and said the sentence that broke the air between us. You're not my family. The room went silent in a way that felt physical, like sound had been pulled out of it. His expression didn't shift at first. It was to stun, to transform. Then it hardened, slowly, like ice forming across water. What did you just say? He whispered. I didn't repeat it. I didn't need to. The damage was already done. He left without closing the door behind him, and for a long time after, I just stood there, staring at the empty doorway, wondering whether I had finally done the one unforgivable thing, or whether it had been inevitable from the moment he started treating me like a lifeline he had no intention of respecting. I thought that was the end, but I didn't know then how quickly things would escalate, or how my words would ripple through the rest of our family. I didn't know the phone calls that were coming, or the confrontation that would force me to face whether I was heartless or simply done being used, and I definitely didn't know that the moment I told him he wasn't my family would be the moment everything finally began to unravel. That was only the beginning. The real fallout started 3 days later, when he didn't show up to work, when my mother called me sobbing, when the police arrived at my door with questions I wasn't prepared to answer. The officers didn't step inside. They stood in the hallway, their breath fogging slightly in the draft. One of them, a tall man with tired eyes, spoke gently, like he was careful not to trigger something he didn't yet understand. We're just checking in, he said. Your brother's co-workers reported he hasn't shown up in 3 days. No calls, no messages. They said you might know where he is. I felt my pulse slow, not speed up. A strange, heavy calm washed over me, because I didn't know, and because a part of me wasn't surprised. I haven't seen him, I said. Not since he came by my apartment 3 days ago. The officers exchanged a look, the kind that says they're piecing together a timeline. Anything unusual happened then? The second officer asked. Unusual. The word felt too small for what had happened. I hesitated, measuring my answer, weighing how much of the truth would turn into more questions. He was upset, I said. We argued. He left abruptly. What about? The officer pressed. I took a long breath. He wanted something from me that I couldn't give. They wrote that down. They didn't ask what. Maybe they already understood the pattern. Maybe they just didn't need the details yet. When they finally left, the silence of the apartment felt sharper than before. The kids in the upstairs unit were running around, footsteps echoing through the ceiling like distant thunder, but underneath it all there was still that hollow quiet. My brother had gone silent before, but never like this. Before, his silence was strategic, performative, designed to make me come running. This time, it felt different. The next call came from my mother. She didn't bother with hello. What did you say to him? She demanded, her voice trembling. He left town. We don't know where he is. Left town. Not disappeared. Not missing. Left. Voluntarily. I exhaled slowly, steadying myself. I told him I wasn't going to keep fixing everything for him. I told him he needed to take responsibility. That's not what he said, she shot back. Of course it wasn't. What did he tell you? That you told him has not your family. That you disowned him. Why would you say something like that? Her voice cracked on the last word, guilt disguised as accusation. I felt an old bitterness stir in my chest. The kind that forms when you've spent years watching one person get rescued, while you're expected to stay afloat on your own. Because it's how I felt in that moment, I said. Because he only comes to me when he wants money, or help, or someone to clean up after him. Has your brother, she hissed. He uses that word like a weapon, I replied quietly. The silence on her end lasted long enough to make me think she might hang up. Instead, she said something that made my stomach tighten. He told us has done. With all of us. He left the state. No forwarding address. It shouldn't have hit me the way it did. But it did. Not grief. Not panic. Something heavier. The knowledge that our family was built on a foundation that had finally cracked wide open. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept going over every argument, every favor. Every moment I'd tried to draw a boundary only to have it dismissed. And beneath all that, a question kept circling, refusing to land. Did I push him away or did he walk away the moment he couldn't extract anything from me? 2 days later, an email arrived. No greeting, no subject line. Just one sentence. You got what you wanted. I'm gone. Then a second line. Don't worry, you won't have to deal with me again. It read less like a threat and more like a declaration. A final one. I forwarded it to my mother. She replied with a single message. This is your fault. I didn't respond. Instead, I closed my laptop and stared at the wall, feeling the weight of a truth I hadn't admitted out loud. My brother had always chosen disappearance over accountability. I had simply stopped cushioning the landing. 3 more days passed. The tension in our family stretched thin enough to snap. My mother stopped speaking to me. My sister sent short, clipped messages demanding updates I didn't have. Everyone wanted me to fix it even though I hadn't broken it. Then, on the 7th day after he left, I received a call from an unknown number with an area code I didn't recognize. I answered. A familiar voice came through, quieter than I'd ever heard it. It's me. My brother said. I'm okay. My breath caught somewhere between relief and dread. In not coming back, he continued. Not for a while. Maybe not ever. Why are you calling me? I asked, my voice steady. Because, he said, I needed you to know that you were right. The line went silent. Then he added, I've been dragging you down for years. I didn't see it. You did. He paused, the sound of wind in the background, like he was calling from the side of a highway or an open field. And when you said I wasn't your family, I realized you were saying I wasn't acting like one. My throat tightened, but I held still. I don't want to be that person anymore. He said. I need to figure out who I am without leaning on you like a crutch. There was a long, fragile quiet. Then, barely audible, "I'm sorry." Before I could respond, the call ended. Not abruptly, just gently. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel anger, or guilt, or obligation. I felt breathing room, space where something new might grow, if he ever came back different, if I ever wanted it to. When I stepped outside that evening, the sky was turning a deep, cold blue. The air smelled like winter, clean and sharp. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like closure beginning to take shape. The days after that call felt unreal, as if my brother's voice had carved out a hollow space inside me that the world hadn't caught up with yet. He was gone, he had left of his own accord, he had finally admitted something I'd been screaming into silence for years. But the truth rarely settles in cleanly. It seeps, it lingers, and my family didn't handle the news the same way I did. By the second week, my mother shifted from crying to simmering resentment. She never yelled directly at me, she preferred quieter weapons. Short messages, guilt-laced questions, silence that implied 1,000 accusations. My sister took a different route. She wanted ordered structure, a neat explanation. She called me nearly every evening, her voice brisk, like she was trying to maintain control by organizing the fallout. "What exactly did he say to you? Where do you think he went? Why didn't you tell us sooner that things were that bad?" I tried to answer what I could, but most of the time all I could say was the truth. I don't know, because I didn't. For the first time, I truly didn't. One night, my sister came over uninvited. She wasn't angry, she looked drained, like someone who had been carrying a weight she didn't know how to set down. She sat on my couch, staring at the floor. "I keep thinking about him walking away," she said. "Just disappearing like that. Has done it before," I reminded her, soft but firm. "Not like this," she murmured. "This feels final." I didn't disagree. There was a difference between temporary chaos and deliberate absence. This was the kind of leaving that doesn't announce a return. She looked up at me suddenly, eyes sharp with something like realization. "You didn't push him," she said. "He jumped." It was the closest thing to understanding I'd gotten from anyone in our family, but understanding didn't erase what was coming next, because while my siblings processed his disappearance, my mother clung to a simpler narrative, one where blame was easier to distribute. "You broke him," she told me on a call one morning. "You're his older sibling. You were supposed to guide him, not abandon him." There it was. The old script, responsibility twisted into accusation, compassion weaponized until it became a burden. Something in me snapped then, quietly but definitively. "Mom," I said, "I didn't abandon him. I stopped enabling him. There's a difference. You should have helped him," she insisted. "I did," I said. "For years. Every time he fell, I caught him. Every time he burned a bridge, I let him cross mine. Every time he messed up, I cleaned the mess." "You're twisting things. I'm correcting them." She went silent. Then, "Has still your brother." "Has an adult," I replied. "An adult who made choices that led him exactly where he is." The line stayed quiet for a long time. I listened to her breathing, uneven and heavy. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost the sharpness. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Has still my child." That's when I realized something crucial. She wasn't angry at me, she was terrified. Terrified of losing him. Terrified of seeing the truth of the son shed protected from consequences his whole life. "Fear doesn't make me the villain," I said gently. "And it doesn't make him a child." She didn't answer, but I could tell something had shifted. Not fixed, not healed, but shifted. Enough to let my words sink in. Later that night, after the kids upstairs had quieted down and the city noises softened into a low hum, I sat on the edge of my bed and replayed my brother's last call. "You were right," had said. "I'm sorry." Two simple sentences, but heavy enough to tilt the axis of the entire family. I didn't know if he would come back. I didn't know if the apology meant change or just guilt. I didn't know what rebuilding would look like if rebuilding ever came. But I knew this. His absence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like the first honest consequence of a decade-long spiral. A week later, things shifted again. I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Postmarked from a small town to states away. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice. My brother's handwriting messy, slanted, unmistakable. I sat down at the kitchen table and read it. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't know what I'm doing yet. I'm staying somewhere cheap, working odd jobs, trying to figure out what living without leaning on you looks like. I'm not good at it, but I'm trying. The next lines were uneven, like his hand had shaken. I'm not ready to talk to Mom, not ready to come home, but I want you to know something. When you said I wasn't your family, it broke something in me. Not because it wasn't true, but because it was. His words became steadier again. I want to become someone you would want to call your family someday. Someone who doesn't drain you. Someone you don't have to save. The final line. When I come back, if I come back, I want to come back different. I sat there for a long time, staring at the letter, feeling something unfamiliar rise in my chest. Not relief, not sorrow, something closer to cautious hope, because for the first time in years, he wasn't asking me for help. He wasn't demanding forgiveness. He wasn't blaming anyone. He was trying in a way he'd never tried before. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and left it on the table. Not hidden, not discarded, just there. A reminder that sometimes a fracture isn't the end of a structure. Sometimes it's the first necessary break before rebuilding can begin. Caleb didn't call me the next morning, but I didn't expect him to. What I didn't expect was waking up to a string of messages from our Aunt Marie, asking me if everything was all right and why Caleb had apparently shown up at her place. In the middle of the night, she said he looked shaken, that he barely spoke, that he just sat in her kitchen staring at the wall like he was waiting for someone to take something else away from him. I told her I'd talk to him. I didn't tell her that I wasn't sure if I could face him again. At work, I sat staring at my screen, unable to focus. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his voice cracking, saw the way he'd stood in my hallway like he didn't know where to put his hands. It tore at me in a way I didn't want to admit. I had spent years locking away the part of me that felt responsible for him, convincing myself that cutting him out was the only way I would survive the exhaustion that followed him everywhere. But something about last night felt irreversible, like the kind of rupture that doesn't just heal on its own. By late afternoon, I couldn't take the pressure building inside me anymore. I texted Caleb, "We need to talk. I'll pick you up." He replied almost immediately, "Okay." When I pulled up to Aunt Mary's, he was already outside, standing on the walkway with his hands shoved in the pockets of a hoodie that wasn't his. He climbed into the passenger seat silently. For a few minutes, I drove without saying anything. The air between us felt fragile. "Where are we going?" he finally asked. "I don't know," I said. "Someplace quiet." That ended up being an overlook just outside town, one we used to go to when we were younger. I parked, turned off the engine, and let the fading daylight settle around us. He spoke first. "Are you gonna tell me again that I'm not your family?" The question sounded smaller than the words he used. I took a breath. I shouldn't have said it like that. "But you meant it." "I meant that I can't keep holding everything together for you. Not alone. Not anymore." He laughed weakly, rubbing his eyes. "I wasn't asking you to. Caleb, every time you've been in trouble, every time you've needed someone to bail you out, I was the one who showed up. I never got to be the kid. I never got to mess up. I was always cleaning up behind you. I know." He stared at the dashboard. "And I'm sorry. You've said that before." "Yeah," he whispered. "I know." The wind rattled the car door. Neither of us moved. He finally added, "When you said I wasn't your family, I didn't know what to do with that. I thought you hated me." I shook my head. "I don't hate you. I'm angry. I'm tired. And I'm scared. Because I don't know how to love you without losing myself." He swallowed, turning toward the window as if hiding the way his face tightened. "I'm trying to get better," he said. "I'm trying so hard. But every time I take one step forward, it's like I mess up again before anyone even notices the progress I made." "I did notice," I said. "I just didn't know how to tell you." He wiped his face with his sleeve. "I don't want you to fix my life. I don't want to do it without you in it." The sentence landed heavily. For the first time in a long time, I heard not the chaos he used to bring into my life, but the fear underneath it. "Maybe," I said slowly, "we need boundaries. Real ones. Ones we both stick to." He nodded, "Okay. And maybe you being my family doesn't have to mean I carry everything for you." "Yeah," he said softly. "I want that too." We sat in silence. Not tense this time, just quiet. The kind of quiet that opens a door instead of closing one. As the last light faded, he asked, "So are we okay?" I didn't answer right away, but I reached over, placed my hand on his shoulder, and squeezed once. "We're starting over," I said. "That's the best I can give." He let out a shaky breath. "That's enough." And for the first time in years, it felt true. The weeks after that conversation didn't magically fix anything, but something shifted between us. Caleb kept his distance when he needed to, and for once he didn't disappear whenever life got difficult. He checked in before asking for help. He apologized without waiting to be confronted, and I found myself answering his messages without the familiar knot of dread tightening in my stomach. One evening, just before the new year, he showed up at my place with 2 cups of coffee and a hesitant smile. "I'm not here because something's wrong," he said quickly, "I'm just trying to be better about showing up for the right reasons." I let him in. We talked about small things at first: work, Aunt Marie, his new routine, and then, somewhere between finishing our drinks and washing the cups, he said quietly, "I didn't realize how much I relied on you until I almost lost you." "You didn't lose me," I said. "You lost the version of me who tried to save everything alone." He nodded, and I'm trying not to drag that version back. Later, as he put on his jacket to leave, he paused at the door. "You know," he said, "when you told me I wasn't your family, it broke me. But maybe it was the only thing that could have made me actually change." I didn't flinch this time. I didn't feel guilt twist in my chest. I simply stepped closer. "You are my family," I said, "but family isn't about sacrifice. It's about responsibility. Both ways." His breathing hitched, but he smiled. Not the nervous smile he used to hide behind. "A real one. I can do that," he said. He left into the cold evening, and for the first time in years, I didn't worry about what kind of trouble he might wander into. I closed the door behind him and felt a strange, quiet certainty settle inside me. We weren't healed. We weren't perfect, but we were finally building something new, something balanced, something that didn't pull either of us under, and maybe that was the closest thing to peace our family had ever known.